What's up, guys? Welcome back to On Air B&B Football with Brandon and Bryce. Bryce and Brandon, you know how it goes by now. Thank you for coming back and revisiting us. Today, we are going to be coming at you with our way too early sleepers for fantasy football in 2024. Before we get started, click the like button, subscribe, share, and do all the good stuff. Show us some love. These are going to be in no particular order. We're going to come off with 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and then 2 tight ends. With that said, Bryce, go ahead and give me your first quarterback.
All right, let's get into it. So number one, my first quarterback is Will Levis. So only started 9 games last year. Didn't have any eye-popping stats or anything like that. Threw 8 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, 1,800 yards. So has D-Hop, older D-Hop. Got Calvin Ridley this year. He's not gonna go. Probably will go undrafted in most leagues. He was QB 21 in the games that he played last year. I think this year, with the addition of Calvin Ridley, and then, we're not big on Tony Pollard at all,
Right.
but I think Tony Pollard will be a
It'll be a
good
help
pass
to
catcher.
a
Yes.
little dump off.
So I think that'll help him also. So I think he'll be definitely a solid backup quarterback. And then possibly if your guy gets injured or anything like that. And then he also has the running ability.
Yeah.
He has a really good running ability. He did that a lot in college. A lot of people compared him to Josh Allen, not doing that at all. But he has a big arm like Josh Allen, has the running ability, has the same body type. I mean, he has potential, not Josh Allen potential, I don't think. But I think he can be a very solid quarterback with everything that he has around him.
I know we're talking about fantasy. The only thing I would say with Will Levis that would ever prevent him from being a good quarterback for fantasy or just in general for the Titans would be he has the awareness of a blind person, no peripheral vision whatsoever, and he's gonna get killed every time. So I don't see him being productive enough. And maybe he can't be good enough with that terrible vision enough to keep his job. So you got to also think about how secure is his job. But I do see the potential for maybe a number 2 QB for the finishing spot, I guess. But I would say he's not going to finish above the 15th quarterback, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I would definitely wouldn't put him as a number 1 quarterback by any means, and I'd more so see him around finishing QB 20 overall, something like that. Because like you said, he has better weapons. He's got the second year in the system, a new coach, new running back. Everything's different. So he has potential, but we'll see.
Yeah, with the protection, so they're definitely going to draft a left tackle, so that'll help the protection, and just what I thought of when I saw him, it was just the potential that he has.
Right.
So and their running ability. I think the running ability will be a lot bigger this year, and that'll help his fantasy stats a lot.
I like it. So who's your number 2 quarterback?
Number 2, so for a number 1 QB in fantasy. So I thought about one that people might not think of. Had a big year last year, so people might not realize that how big he was last year, was Jared Goff. So Jared Goff last year was definitely a number 1, could have been a number 1 QB for your fantasy team. Last year, Jared Goff was second in passing yards with 4,500, fourth in touchdowns with 30. So when you think about that, that's top 5 QB stats just by the NFL. But in fantasy stats, he was at the QB 12. That's because he doesn't have any rushing abilities at all.
Right.
But just throwing the ball, he's a top 12 quarterback, which in fantasy, I mean,
That's a number 1 quarterback.
Yeah, number 1. That's number one quarterback.
The only thing I would say about Goff is for all of the Goff managers who had him last year, which was me being one of them, you experienced the ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't, I wouldn't say his fantasy finish is exactly what it seemed like throughout the season. I would say, so I know I saw a stat, I can't remember where I saw it, but it was his home games compared to his away games. He just cannot play away.
Yeah.
And, I guess it's the dome, whatever, but I like Goff as, he could be my starting quarterback, but I would definitely have to have somebody I would feel as comfortable
Mm-hmm.
being there if I couldn't rely on Goff. I wouldn't wait until the last few rounds to take another quarterback. I would have to probably draft one a few rounds later after Goff. But I do like Goff. He's got very solid options at receiver.
Yeah.
Still has Gibbs, who's an incredible receiving back, and then David Montgomery to lean on in the run game. So
Yeah.
there's nothing to hate about Goff there.
No. Yeah, I just thought about him as if you like pick a quarterback later in the rounds, that he could be a good option for you if you want to build like a high volume running back receiver team,
Right.
get a good tight end early. Then you could lean. He's going to be kind of inconsistent maybe some weeks, but if you want to get him at a later round and you're not a big quarterback guy, then Goff might be your guy.
Right. If he falls far enough, or if he stays where he's at,
Yeah.
then I definitely wouldn't mind that. For my number one quarterback, number one is Jaden Daniels. Like I said, these are in no particular order. I have Jaden Daniels in there. I've stated in previous videos how I'm not really a big fan of him at all coming into the season, but quarterbacks like him are bred to spew fantasy points. Like you look at Anthony Richardson, a rushing quarterback who has inconsistent throwing, which is Jaden Daniels. There's a few other examples of them as well, but what I think is really important for Jaden Daniels is what every other fantasy player thinks is, which is his rushing upside. That's the big deal. I mean, yeah, I did see where he managed to get to his second read on 14.8% of his dropbacks. And there was reports saying that you're not going to see Jaden Daniels getting tunnel vision. So this brings me into the point of if he gets drafted to Washington, then that would be kind of the ideal spot for him, I would say. He gets to learn under Mariota, who was a rushing quarterback, and kind of like the same player as him, I would say, in a way. But he also has two great receivers in Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. And, for not getting tunnel vision on his first read, that's perfect so he can actually bring Jahan Dotson's, potential back and, make another great receiver out of it. So, I don't know. For fantasy, I like Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about previous videos, you weren't big on him coming out of college, but from a fantasy perspective, he could be good. So we don't know where he's going to go, of course, but Washington has picked up a lot of speed on getting him just because of his dual threat ability. And I think him sitting behind Mariota for a little bit would help, which of course I think Daniels will end up getting playing time.
Yeah, absolutely will.
With that
start.
And like you said, with him going to second reads and stuff like that, he has improved a lot in his college career and his passing percentage, his completion percentage. He's gone up in completion percentage at least 2 to 5% each year, completing 72.2% last year. And then his QBR last year was first in college football at 95.6. So with that, he's improved every year and grown in that sense. And then having great wide receivers at LSU, having two receivers, and then going to Washington, having two great receivers that you can find, I think that'll help him for sure.
Right.
And of course the running ability.
Yeah. The only thing I say about it is, you mentioned he has the potential to grow, and he has shown a lot of growth over his college career. But I think in the NFL, for him to grow in his game, he needs a great head coach, and he has a defensive head coach. So,
yeah, that's going to hurt.
For dynasty managers, I don't know if I would draft him and use a top pick on him, just because I'm not sure about job security over the years. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of him as a player, just as a fantasy player.
If he would go to Washington, though, he's got Cliff Kingsbury there.
Didn't have a very successful run in Arizona the last time that he coached in the NFL. So
that's true. But I mean, Arizona at the time was
and his quarterback was Kyler Murray, a Russian quarterback who had a big arm.
Guess we'll see.
I don't know.
But I mean, he might not even go to Washington, so
Maybe not, but
I do like his dual threat ability. I do like his dual threat ability for fantasy.
but I did just mention my next quarterback, number 2 for me. My number 2 quarterback is Kyler Murray. So similar to Jaden Daniels, they both got the big arm. They both got the rushing upside. But Kyler Murray, he's actually 2 years removed from his injury. So we talk about this a lot with receivers and running backs who have torn an ACL or an MCL, whatever the major injury was. But usually when they come back the next season, you see it. You can see that they're visually slower and they don't have as much explosiveness. And I feel like it would be the same for a rushing quarterback or, anybody who runs the ball like that. So when Murray's scrambling around doing his little drills, then being healthy finally is going to help him there. And then he also is going to have Marvin Harrison and he's going to have Michael Wilson, 2 great receivers. And then he also has Trey McBride, who I might mention a little bit later. But either way, very good receiving targets coming in and already there. So I give me Kyler Murray all the way. I like the Cardinals. I like Kyler Murray for fantasy as well. I'll take him pretty much anywhere he goes.
Yeah, I like that one. I like that one. With Kyler Murray, on the draft boards, he might not be as high as some of the other guys just because of that injury. So like you'll definitely see him fall a little bit. So seeing him, getting him there, another dual threat quarterback, rushing quarterbacks in fantasy, they help a lot. They help a lot.
Dude, people forget how
they
good
do.
he was. In his last full season, he finished as the quarterback 2 behind Josh Allen. Only Josh Allen, and he averaged 24.4 fantasy points a game. So y'all can hate on him all you want. You can let him drop all you want because that's just more gold mine from me.
He has been a good fantasy quarterback when he's been healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, last year did hurt him a little bit, but he came back and showed that he can still play. So, and then you got to see what receiving threat, or got to see what he gets out of the draft.
Right. He'll get Marvin. All right. So, Bryce, who do you have as your number 1 running back?
My number 1 running back sleeper for 2024 is Zamir White, Brandon Madison. So, with that, it could hurt his carries, could hurt his touches. I just think that he'll be the number 1 back there. With Josh Jacobs out those 4 games last season, Zamir White hit 100 yards twice.
He looked really good.
They gave him the ball 20 times, 3 games in a row, 17 times the other game. Had two 100-yard games and another game with 100 yards total, with 100 total yards. So he got touches, got the yards. I mean, he looked really good. And he showed he could be a workhorse back there.
Right. And this is on a Raiders team who has Gardner Minshew at quarterback. So
Yeah.
And they've come out and said they want to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's their identity this year. So that'll make Devontae Adams happy, but I completely agree with you. I like Zamir White a lot. And I even probably would be higher on him than you, I would say, in the sense of I don't think Madison is really going to have a role. I think that at the beginning of the year, they're going to try to include him in the backfield, and it may be a little bit annoying for fantasy managers.
It could be like a bringing in Dalvin to the Jets last year, something like that. Maybe
I would say it's something like that because you saw in Minnesota they tried to use Madison as a starting back, and over the course of the season, it didn't work, and they like Ty Chandler, the other back better. So, I think it'll be the same kind of situation here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think Zamir wants it too. Like, he's a younger guy. Like,
I do think that they will draft a running back in this draft, though, because, like I said, if they see the same thing that we saw last year in Madison, they're going to want to draft a younger guy to sit behind Zamir and maybe chip in a little bit here and there. But who's your number 2 running back?
2 is Chase Brown. So I know you like Zach Moss, but I like Chase Brown just because of his big play ability, his pass catching ability. So he had big plays last year. Had a play of 25 plus, had a play of 30 plus, had a 50 plus yard receiving touchdown. He has a big playability. Again, as a rookie back last year, another young, hungry back. So with that, I know they're kind of gonna split touches. I think Chase Brown will definitely be the third down guy. But I think he'll show later that he's worth getting more touches because of his big playability.
See, I like your pick here. I really do because I was actually debating on throwing Zach Moss as one of my picks. And then when I was talking to Bryce about it, he kind of gave me some knowledge on Chase Brown, and now I like him too. So I all in all cut him out because I feel like it's going to be a shared backfield.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like Zach Moss is very talented. We saw that last year where he was taking touches from Jonathan Taylor,
Yeah.
one of the top backs in the league. So if you have to beat out Chase Brown
Yeah, you can
for some
definitely do
work,
that.
he's definitely going to do it. So it's going to be a pretty shared backfield, in my opinion, unless one of them gets injured. And then you're going to see what I don't even remember the other dude's name, but yeah, it'll be a pretty difficult backfield to navigate for fantasy, I would say. So as much as I like both of them, I might just stay away from them. Like I said, it's way too early right now. We'll
Mhm.
see how the offseason progresses.
Yeah, you also got to see how training camp and off season goes too, because I saw something too that said that Chase Brown can still win the number 1 running back spot in camp.
He could.
So if that happens too, he could very well move up draft boards.
They've talked about how much they like him. So.
Yeah.
Yep, it could happen.
Moving on to yours. Your running backs.
So for my running backs, number 1 sleeper running back would be Javonte Williams. So what was it? I guess 2 years ago, I was very high on Saquon after he was coming back 2 years removed from his ACL injury. This is exactly what I stated when I talked about Kyler Murray. Any kind of rusher, so it'd be running backs or receivers who are dual threats or quarterbacks, whatever it may be. But Javonte Williams is 2 years removed now from his pretty bad knee injury. Before Saquon even, you saw McCaffrey was injured a lot, and then when he was 2 years removed, he had a strong recovery 2 years after, not the year after, but 2 years after. You saw him really flourish in the role. Same thing with Saquon, and now the same thing is going to happen with Javonte. No matter what time it is in this offseason, I will be high on Javonte. They can draft another running back all they want, but with Javonte Williams, he has no real competition other than Jaleel McLaughlin and the fact that Sean Payton likes to use a 2-back system. I think right now he's being drafted as the 24th running back off the board. So at that price, definitely give me Javonte. That's, what, 4th round? 5th round probably. So yeah, I don't think you can talk me out of him.
Yeah, with Javonte, he had that knee injury, of course, and he just hasn't looked really the same since. So in fantasy wise, he's one of the guys I'm kind of looking to stay away from unless he kind of just falls in a later round.
But it's coming off the 2-year thing. Does that not
Yeah,
you?
No, I mean he hasn't been the same, and he just hasn't looked the same. And with that Denver team, no quarterback, probably gonna have a rookie quarterback. No, not really any wide. I mean,
Which is why they would run it.
They're gonna try to run the football, and they're gonna want to run the football. It's just that offensive line I don't think's the greatest either. So he's just a running back that I don't really like that much this year.
Fair enough.
So he's just one I drafted also 2 years ago, so it kind of hurt me a little bit.
I was hurt by him last
But
year.
it's not just that though. It's just I don't like that Denver team enough to like to want to draft him.
I get it. More for me. My second running back, he's not exactly going to be a number 1 running back, but he'll give you some great production for where he's being drafted. He's probably going to be drafted as a running back 4 for people's teams, running back 3, running back 4. But it's Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller is obviously behind Alvin Kamara, and also there's Jamal Williams there who got 1 touchdown last year. But you see a huge decline in Kamara's play. You see, towards the end of the year at least, Kendre Miller getting a little bit more touches than he was getting earlier in the year. And then when he did play, he had a 24% missed tackle rate. 24% missed tackle rate, and he also had an average of 3.07 yards after contact. So he's a stockier back, a little bit smaller, but he's stocky. But he has the same skill sets as Alvin Kamara, and he can be used as a little boulder in the backfield, I believe. With, Kamara's declining production and younger back coming up behind him, I feel like that's a pretty good pick.
Yeah, I like that pick actually. So I saw him on some boards and I was like, I kind of like him because I really liked him at TCU.
Yeah.
So with I saw him, I was like, I'm thinking about putting him in mine, but then I like Chase Brown and Zamir White a little bit better. So like you said, Kamara's getting older, declining a little bit. It sucks kind of seeing that. Kamara was a fun player to watch.
Oh yeah.
So the Saints
Great for fantasy.
Yeah, Saints might want to look towards that two-back system with that, especially having two guys that can do that. Maybe use Kamara outside a little bit more, have him back there.
Yeah.
He's kind of he runs different than Kamara also, so he's more of a hard-nosed get up the gut guy. So maybe some touchdowns for him. So I like the pick. Maybe a little bit later on the rounds. Maybe
Absolutely,
a good free agent pickup.
Yeah,
in a little bit.
I mean, the whole reason I mentioned him in the sleepers is specifically because he's going to be drafted so low. Yeah, being drafted as a running back 3 or running back 4, and rounds, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it may be. I like Miller a lot.
Yeah, and if you see his carries pick up, definitely be a solid flex.
Yeah, for sure. But give me your number one fantasy sleeper receiver.
Number one receiver, Jaden Reed. So led the Packers in receiving last year, led in receptions, yards, tied with touchdowns with Romeo Doubs.
Did he reach 1,000 yards last year?
Didn't, was right under 800.
Okay.
They had 3 receivers throw the ball to. Jordan Love shared the ball a lot last year. Christian Watson was out a good bit last year, so that gave the opportunity to Reed a little bit more. But I just like Reed's ability to get open. Christian Watson's more of the big play guy. Doubs and Reed are more
intermediate
catching the ball. But Reed also has the big play ability. Also can also run the ball, do some end arounds, all that stuff. So I think he'll get a lot of touches this year. I think he was Jordan Love's favorite target. Even when Christian Watson came back, he was still getting him the ball a lot more. He was rated at wide receiver 33 last year. So I think his production will increase a lot more. Touchdowns at 8, I think he'll stay around that. But I definitely think that receptions, because he didn't start off the year hot either.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that's all with them kind of going late.
He was a second-round pick, so I think they're going to use him. But you do have Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. You have a good wide receiver trio. I just like Jaden Reed the best out of all of them to get, receptions and yards.
Right. I agree with them. And, I mean, it's all about, for me, with that receiving group in the Packers offense, like you said, they have so many options, so it's kind of hard for me to navigate which one I want to take. It all depends on ADP, because if Christian Watson falls to a further spot, maybe I'll believe in him that he's not going to get injured this year.
Yeah, and I did think about him as a sleeper, but it's just his injuries are kind of
exactly, and you saw at the end of the year too with Doubs, especially throughout the season, he has games where he completely disappears, and he has games where he has, a 30-point game out of nowhere.
Was so inconsistent last
year. There was points where Jaden Reed even was the same thing, and then, Christian Watson when he was healthy, and Aaron Jones when he was healthy. So it's all about inconsistencies in the Packers offense, and I like the pick. I like Jaden Reed a lot. It's just, if he falls far enough, that's where I'll take him.
Yeah, and like I said, he also carries the ball a little bit too. Right. He had 11 carries, 119, and 2 touchdowns last year.
Kind of like a little Deebo Samuel.
Little Deebo Samuel in them. So I think they can, with the floor there too, they can work that offense.
Through him, yeah.
Work the offense through him and expand that playbook definitely.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind that at all.
Yeah.
Who's your second receiver?
Number 2 is Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Okay, wow.
So they used a first-round pick on him, pick 20 last year. I think they're going to want to use him more. Lockett is getting older. Lockett will have his 30, 40-point random game that we talk about, and just random out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, there's Lockett again. But he's getting older. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba can be that number one receiver. DK is, of course, the number one receiver right now, but he can definitely overtake that.
Right,
He
especially
had the talent to do that.
especially with DK's decline in production for fantasy
Yeah.
last year.
You do have Geno throwing the ball.
Right. Then
But-
the biggest thing I think you're forgetting to mention is they don't have Shane Waldron there anymore.
Yeah.
Which Jackson Smith was live on air when he said he did not like Shane Waldron essentially. But, new coordinator, new head
Mhm.
coach. They have another quarterback who can throw the ball back there now, and Sam Howell if Geno Smith can't keep up. So I like that a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
DK showed like signs of, maybe he's not the same receiver he's been in the past for fantasy. So with Lockett kind of disappearing a little bit, I like Smith maybe as like a wide receiver, a wide receiver too for sure,
or definitely a flex.
Probably around
Yeah.
20 some,
But
maybe 15 to 20.
Yeah, I definitely like him. Definitely having a bigger year this year.
For sure.
And then so you're move on to your two receivers.
Yeah. So for my fantasy receiver number 1, I have Christian Kirk. So don't forget about Kirk, not Cousins. Just because Ridley was there last year and Kirk was hurt some of the time, I feel like he got overshadowed a lot. But he averaged 11 points a game through 12 games, and that was a higher target share than Calvin Ridley. Now, he finished as overall the wide receiver 23. Like I said, as long as he can stay healthy, he especially has another guy who he's in that same wide receiver room with, and Gabe Davis, who has been known to not be able to earn targets. So if he could out-target Calvin Ridley, who was supposed to be this elite talent last year, then I definitely think he out-targets, Evan Ingram and Gabe Davis. And then if ETN gets any receiving work, I definitely feel like Christian Kirk comes back as a fringe wide receiver 1, maybe. Around probably wide receiver 14 is where I would put him. But like Christian Kirk a lot this year, maybe in Trevor Lawrence a little bit of a bounce back season. So we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely like him as a wide receiver 2, a very solid wide receiver 2. Last year, so him going to Jacksonville last year, I was like, they overpaid this guy, like big time. I felt like. But then he started playing and doing good, and then fantasy wise, he was doing really good, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I was a little wrong there, but then I was like, okay, I might want to
start off hot.
Yeah,
So
so I'd like him a lot this year. If he falls a little bit to maybe, like I said, like a solid wide receiver 2, I would definitely grab him this year.
Yeah, for sure. For my number 2 receiver, I have a guy who CeeDee Lamb talked up as one of his favorite receivers in the league. Now, aside from that, this is obviously talking fantasy. His name is Wan'Dale Robinson, the Giants wide receiver 1? So with Wan'Dale, there's no real stats on him. He's been injured a lot. He's had backup quarterbacks throwing to him for the most part when he is healthy. All that I see in the positivity for him is obviously CD talking him up. That's a little bit of a hype piece, but he doesn't really have any competition there. Darren Waller, who's aging, but he's still a strong tight end. But you're competing with Jalen Hyatt. You don't have Saquon anymore, which is a huge deal because he was getting a lot of receiving work. And Wan'Dale is used as a little bit of a gadget guy.
He is,
kind of like Jaden Reed.
Yeah.
So if they can get him working like that, as long as he stays healthy, he's a smaller guy, but I like him a lot for fantasy and for the Giants in general. So
yeah, so with him, I'm just so unsure about him. It's like it's felt like forever that the Giants haven't had a number 1 guy.
right.
It's like it's time someone does that, and Wan'Dale's been hurt. And then like I said, you have Jalen Hyatt there too, Waller. But, I mean, wide receiver-wise, you don't know who's going to be that number 1 guy. So I really do like Wan'Dale out of those guys to be kind of that gadget guy also, kind of like Jaden Reed. But I think Wan'Dale has an even more explosive factor than what Reed would have and what Hyatt has.
Exactly. I mean,
So-
that's pretty much his whole game.
Yeah.
All he really has.
So if you can find a way to get him involved that way, then I think it'll work big time.
He could be very good for fantasy. Maybe
Yeah.
a little bit of a Debo-esque season, Jaden Reed-esque. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see. Who's your first tight end?
No tight ends, yeah. My first tight end, not in the league yet, don't know where he's going to go, is going to be Brock Bowers.
Okay.
So definitely by far the best tight end in college football, probably the last 2, maybe 3 years. So he's gonna go somewhere. I hope it's to the Jets, who I'm high on this year. If he goes there, I mean his target's gonna be a little weird, but it's just gonna depend on where he goes. But just from a talent standpoint, he is gonna be really, really good. Don't know where he's gonna fall fantasy wise, but I definitely think it'll be in the first 4 rounds.
You think?
Yeah.
For a rookie tight end?
Yeah, he's that good that if people know about him, they're gonna take him probably in like the 3rd or 4th round.
Okay.
But it also does depend where he goes.
Right. I think maybe he falls around the 5th or 6th round because
He could.
I also do have him projected in the actual draft as falling to, one of the later teams who were in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's just so talented, and he's gonna get open and catch balls. I mean, he's more of a pass catching tight end like Kyle Pitts. It's just you got to give him the ball.
Right. He's very talented. I mean, you pretty much covered it all there.
Yeah.
They have other solid receiving options in New York now. So you got Mike Williams and Garrett Wilson. And we've seen that Rodgers can deal. He can get it to multiple guys, whether it's receivers, tight ends, or running backs. So I like your pick a lot.
Yeah.
Who's your second tight end?
Second one, not a very high guy. It's just this team doesn't So we're talking about the Chargers. Chargers don't have anybody to throw to. If we're talking about Hayden Hurst, going to the Chargers, they got rid of Gerald Everett. Don't have really any tight ends.
No Keenan.
No Keenan. No Mike Williams. No Austin Eckler. You just have Justin Herbert, Gus Edwards, and Hayden Hurst out there.
An elite quarterback throwing you the ball.
Yeah. So I think just Hayden Hurst, he could be a late. He was solid in Atlanta. They drafted Kyle Pitts, so there's no need for him there. Was at Carolina last year. Didn't really get much volume there. So he is getting older a little bit, but I think just he could be a solid, like one of your last picks in your draft.
Yeah.
Maybe just to grab, just to have a solid tight end, just because LA has
like
no
a
one
good number two,
number two, just to find just someone, just because who's Justin Herbert going to throw the ball to?
Right.
Find a solid tight end, just get a few. He'll get some points for you.
I mean, the same argument goes for any receivers that go to the Chargers. Is how are they actually going to use them?
Yeah.
Is just because the running coach, OC. So we'll see how they use them. But we've seen in the course of Justin Herbert's career that he does like to target tight ends. So
yeah,
whether it's Donald Parham, Trey McKitty, or Hayden Hurst now. So we'll see. So for my first tight end, sleeper, I have Darren Waller. So I just talked about his teammate, Wan'Dale Robinson, who I also have as a sleeper, because it's kind of going to be like one of those things where it's one or the other, I feel like. But Darren Waller could very well be a sleeper at the same time. So Darren Waller, I think he's, 32 years old. He's coming off of a season where he was injured the whole time pretty much. And, he talked about retirement a little bit in the offseason. But he's still, I feel like, one of the most impactful tight ends for fantasy football. If you get him at the right price, he is the only elite target, at least, for that Giants offense.
Yeah.
For the Giants offense. He's not an elite target pretty much anywhere else. But in the Giants offense, he will be. So, if we've seen where the Giants quarterbacks do like to feed him the ball. So I personally like Darren Waller if he falls to maybe the 6th or 7th round. Maybe even, you may see him drop a little bit further.
Yeah.
We'll see. But
yeah, I definitely like the sense of if you can get him at a good price. So, maybe you like drafting your tight ends a little bit later. Waller's there.
Yep.
At like the 6th or 7th round, maybe later. So yeah, I definitely like that, and because he's not gonna be a high tight end this year, going off of what he did last year. So I think he's still got the talent there. Someone's got to give him the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got to find him.
The only problem is Daniel Jones coming back from his injury. We'll see how
Yeah.
he fares with that. But
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah. So my last one is somebody who I have confessed my love for over this offseason and towards the end of last season because of my dynasty leagues, my redraft leagues. I had him everywhere I possibly could. Traded for him everywhere I could. His name is Trey McBride.
It's your boy.
So I've got the stack right here in my picks with Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. So when you saw, there's no specific stat on this for me right now. It's just anybody who watched the Cardinals games last year when Kyler Murray was finally healthy and you saw them play together, Kyler Murray loved throwing the ball to him. Now, I'm sure, Marquise Brown was hurt a lot towards the end of the season, especially. They only had really Mike Wilson, Rondale Moore, James Conner. They didn't really have anybody to throw the ball to. And then Zach Ertz even went out. So all I did see was that, when his final fantasy finish last year was tight end 7. But that was after a slow start. And when Zach Ertz was out and Kyler Murray came back in, there was a few games where they weren't together. But when Zach Ertz was out, he finished as the overall tight end 3 in that span. So, he passes the eye test. He has the stats from the end of last year where he started late, promising sophomore season. And we're looking at a promising junior season as well, I feel like. Really high on Trey McBride. I do feel like he's going to go maybe round 4 or 5, 4 at the highest, but probably the 5th or 6th round if I had to guess. And I'm absolutely taking him there.
But he's a guy that you talked to me about that I've learned a lot more about from you. So, you telling me about him and all that stuff and me seeing some of his highlights, I've definitely learned a little bit more about him and liked him more because you talked about him. He's definitely a guy that, because we do draft tight ends later, me and you both. So he's definitely a guy that I would probably look for now in fantasy. Probably won't be there because you're going to take him in all of our leagues.
I was about to say back off.
Yeah. So he's definitely a guy to look for that a lot of people might not know to look for to get.
Right.
But like I said, Kyler Murray does like his tight ends. He definitely liked Ertz when he was there.
Max Williams.
Max Williams, he liked him there too. And he showed he liked Trey McBride last year because Murray wasn't there first half of the season.
Right.
Murray was there second half of the season, and his stats went crazy.
Exactly.
So, yeah, he's a good young guy that I think will have a really good year this year. We won't ever pick him in fantasy because Brandon's going to steal him every time.
Yeah. And just to end off the episode, do you think? So I'm getting you on board with Trey McBride.
I'm not a Cardinals.
I feel like I'm pushing a little bit of Kyler Murray on you.
It's not that you.
Do you think that including Marvin Harrison into this offense, that the Cardinals could be better than what you're expecting?
No. Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
I don't think yet.
I'm gonna get you on.
The defense isn't there.
I'm gonna get you on board.
Defense isn't there. The offense could be there this year. But I still think I know you're not big on the 49ers.
High scoring games. That's perfect for fantasy, baby.
Perfect for fantasy. But yeah, I don't think they're there yet. We'll see though.
All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for us today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening on YouTube and Spotify, whichever one you're on. Help us reach our goal once again of, where we can talk to you, the fans, the players, and the coaches. We can't do it without y'all's support, love, whatever you want to do, but make sure you click the like button, subscribe for us, share with everybody you know, whether they like football or not, because they're definitely going to like us. And then please just do us a favor and leave in the comments what you want to see for future videos. Mucho apreciado. Deuces.